Nick, you and I were both trained in neurophysiology and have had a fascination with consciousness our entire lives. I've done other things and have looked on it from the outside. You've been one of the pioneers in really developing theories of what consciousness is. So I'd like to start with just a description of your sense of what this remarkable feeling of consciousness is.
I think it's surprising sometimes that people think there's a puzzle about defining consciousness. In some ways, it's the most obvious thing there is for us. It's what we wake up to every morning when we open our eyes and we see the blue sky out the window and we hear the birds singing and we smell the aroma of coffee coming up the stairs, perhaps. We're suddenly bathed in sensation. We're living in what I call the thick moment of sensation. And that's consciousness. That's at least the most remarkable aspect of consciousness. We can define consciousness to include a whole lot of other stuff, more high-level thoughts and memories and beliefs and so on. But for me, consciousness is just the experience of raw sensation, of living in the present moment.
When we say that, that perhaps can be expressed through very simple sensations. But when we have this remarkable feeling of what it's like to have this feeling, it seems like something so different than everything else we know in the physical world.
Well, exactly so. And you say this could be expressed in terms of simple sensations. Sensations are not simple. Sensations are possibly the most mysterious thing which exists in our universe. Sensations, our experience of sensation, seems to have qualities which material matter couldn't give rise to.
Yes.
And that's where the mystery lies. Sometimes I say that consciousness is an illusion. And the reason for saying that is that it seems to us that it exists outside of time and space and matter as defined by physics. Now, it can't be so. I'm a materialist. This is being produced by my brain or your brain. And so I believe that in the end, the explanation must come down to what's going on inside our heads. But consciousness doesn't seem to have those qualities. And it may be part of its very importance to us that it doesn't seem to have the properties of matter, because it makes us think of ourselves as being something outside matter, of having a metaphysical significance, perhaps, which sets us above and outside the mundane world.
But this is an illusion.
I hope it's an illusion, I should say, because as a scientist, I want to believe that we can explain it in terms of physics and chemistry, the matter of the brain. If some of the properties of consciousness, which we all value so much, for example, its privacy, the fact that only I know what's going on inside my head, its sense of thickness, that it seems to exist over and above physical time. We don't live in the physical instant. We live in what I've called the extended moment of consciousness. Now, how can something actually outlast physical time? It can't. If that's not an illusion, then we're dealing with something, something paranormal. But my belief, of course, is that there's nothing paranormal about consciousness. We're not going to have to invoke new laws of physics or new laws of psychic phenomena to explain it. In the end, we must be able to bring this all back to earth with an explanation in terms of the chemistry and physics of the brain.
Well, let's look at consciousness. You differentiate between sensation and perception. Help me through that.
I think it's very important to separate sensation off as a separate kind of experience, which is different from actually representing what the things out there in the world actually are, or what they've got categories they belong to, and so on. Let's take, the sound of a bird. The sound entering our ears gives rise to the sensations of musicality and the trills and the beauty of it all. That's all there at the present of sensation. At the same time, we can recognize that this is the sound of a thrush, let's say. That's perception. We use our senses in two ways. We use it to take in the properties of the external world to represent what is out there. And at the same time, we use our senses to react personally to the stimuli which are arriving at our bodies, the light at our eyes, the sound at our ears, the chemicals on our tongues, for that matter. And we react to that with a form of bodily expression. It's personal. Sensation is deeply personal. It's our take on what's happening to us and how we feel about it. And in fact, I believe that sensation in evolution has actually is derived from a form of bodily expression. We're reacting to stimuli, and it's our own reaction which in the end gives rise to sensation. That's not true of of perception. It's not true of the judgments we make about the things out there. When I see red, for example, I both can classify the object giving rise to redness as being a red object with that physical property. But to me, it's something much more than that. It's stirring me up with an extraordinary, private, conscious experience. And in trying to understand, to get to the bottom of that, we need to separate that off as a separate thing which the brain is doing. One of my reasons for insisting on this distinction is that, in fact, they can be separated, perception and sensation.
So how do you use this distinction between perception and sensation in leading to the remarkable conclusion that our consciousness is an illusion?
Well, I wouldn't say I use that distinction to get there. I think that perception is not illusory. Perception delivers the goods about what's really out there, so that's true. Sensation, on the other hand, is not entirely an illusion. It's telling us something about the stimulation which is arriving at our body. When we sense red, have a red sensation, of course, that tells us that there's red light arriving at our eyes. But the quality of sensation seems to go far beyond that. It doesn't just tell us about the objective fact. It colors it with emotion. It gives it a kind of personal dimension. And some of those personal dimensions, or several of them, must, I think, be illusory because they seem to exist outside of the material universe. They make us believe we're in the presence of something which couldn't be delivered by the machinery of the brain. Now, I'd go from there to say, yes, it's an illusion, but it's a contrived illusion. The brain has set us up to experience these phenomena in the way a magician can set up a mystery show on stage to impress us with the strangeness of the phenomena which he's demonstrating. In this case, it's our own brain which is impressing us with what's going on in our heads in a way which makes us feel special and transcendent. There are many ways in which I think that pays off in terms of the way we live our lives, but in the end, that's what the point of consciousness is, and in the end, why it evolved.